This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Avella, brought to you by Sit and Cards.
Welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod, episode 36, the Autumn Nation Series, 3 games in a row. So we're going to look forward to that. This is brought to you by Sit and Cards, and Harry's back. How's it, Harry?
How's it, MV? Yeah, everyone's a guru and a boffin right now predicting scores. I had New Zealand to win by 5 this last weekend, and they won by 2. So I was off, but I still like the fact that I picked the winner. I think everyone likes to do that. It's a fun thing to do, and I think the key is, just like Autumn Nation Series, is to make some kind of package out of it. So what do you have in store?
Well, talking of that, we have a competition in conjunction with Certain Cars on their Facebook page. The link is at the bottom in the description. Predict the score, use the hashtag shift to score, and you can win R1,000. So make sure you enter that. Don't miss out on this. I'm quite excited. We're going to have this competition each week. Scotland versus Africa, England versus Africa, and Wales versus South Africa. So R1,000 for each game. Harry, what did we learn this weekend from the Scotland game? I mean, it was outside the test window. Blair Kinghorn wasn't there. Finn Russell wasn't there. Fiji missed most of their test players. Sort of the Fijian Drua there. Did we learn anything?
Nah, not much. I think this is, obviously it was really fun. It was a great match to watch. And I got very lucky in that all I did was do a little clip of the Scottish Lekkerback, Mac Lekkerback, and Darcy Graham, and I got 3 million views of something. It was just a casual rugby play, but all we got from it was those kind of highlights. We got internet, social media highlights from the game, because little defense was being played. It was a bit scrappy and crazy. But when you just have the Fijian Drua, like a Super Rugby club team that was middle of the road, kind of average Super Rugby team, play Scotland in Scotland, it's not going to really work really well. I had imagined that they would have more of their players available, but they didn't. So they're French-based players, a lot of the UK-based players, they'll be back. Fiji will be, better. But I don't think we can extrapolate or deduct much from a match like that.
Oh, 57-17. It's a good score, though. Darcy Graham made a triumphant comeback a year later, 4 tries. He drew level with Duan van der Merwe for a little bit, and then Duan scored another try, so he's got the most tries again. So that was quite impressive, that Mick Lekkerback that you call him.
Yeah, I mean, even the clip that I showed was a knock-on, actually, but they gave him the try. Scottish players hit about 4 Fijians square in the jaw with their heads, no cards, not even a review. So I just think that it was festival, carnival rugby. Very difficult to. I don't think the test coaches, well, for sure, I don't think that Springbok coaches are going to study that match to get ready for Scotland. They probably look at some of the URC. They have been looking at some of the URC to see what Franco has brewing. They for sure going back to World Cup and Six Nations and looking at what Scotland has done when they're playing a proper rugby test match. I think that was just almost like a barbarians match. So I'm not really putting much stock in it. I enjoyed it though, and it was fun to see rugby played that kind of half mad, just madcap.
You mentioned Frankie Smith there, and I'm very concerned about his inside knowledge. He's always got this little smile up, on his face when he talks about South African teams. He neutralized the altitude at Loftus, and he neutralized the conditions down in Stellenbosch the other day. If there's anybody who knows how to beat a South African team, it's Frankie Smith. I want to call on him today and say, listen, your blood's supposed to be green, not blue.
Well, no, I think so. Scotland does have the mental material to be problematic. It just hasn't played out that way. I think the Springboks are good, just like some teams are. Let's say they're ranked 3 or 4, but they struggle against a team that they play that's ranked 7 or 8. But traditionally, perpetually struggle against that kind of team because it's a matchup. Rugby has turned into a matchup sport where it's Ireland versus New Zealand versus France versus South Africa. There's different permutations of that, but we struggle with certain types of style and we don't struggle with some other. Scotland is not a style we struggle with at the test level. Throw aside the irk, put that to the side. At test level, Springboks can handle Scotland, must handle Scotland, should not be speaking of where we are in the history of the game without beating Scotland pretty handily. I'll just go back in time. 2018, I was in Edinburgh, and I went to Murrayfield, and I watched a game play out there with Archie Snyman, Embros Papier, Stephen Kitsoff, launching a try up the middle, and guys like Creel finishing. There was no way Scotland couldn't handle the pace and power when properly applied. What they had is moments of brilliance from particular players, and they do have that, and Scotland will always have that. But they don't have the 18-minute grind that Ireland and New Zealand can put on the field to handle the physicality. Whereas the Boks struggle against Ireland, in a way they shouldn't. Ireland plays better against Springboks than Ireland plays against other teams. And so, I think we mustn't view it as Vinchat to say that we should go to Scotland and win. We should go to Scotland and win because that's what we do, even when we were not having the best Springbok teams in history or thereabouts. And even when we were playing Scottish teams that actually were better than this one. So no, I think it's an expectation. It's an expectation of Bok fans, Bok pundits, Bok coaches, and Bok players that we must handle the number 7 team in the world when we want to.
Yeah, it's important to remember the number 7 in the world. And you talked to me last night, we talked about it on WhatsApp, and I said to you, yes, I'm a little worried. And I realized that I'm suffering from underdog syndrome to this day. And you said you disabused me of that notion. I mean, the number 1 team in the world, number 2 team in the world, sorry, 2 World Cups in a row, probably the second best team so far, maybe even the best, depending on what happens in 2027. We have every right to be confident, and we should be confident. And this underdog thing it's going to be put to bed once and for all, I think.
The ability to handle it is the key, right? The ability to handle the idea of being favorites is the next big thing. It's the thing that we've been talking about all year, is what will make this team be in the conversation with the 2008 to 2017 All Blacks, winning percentage, cups, trophies, not just falling back on World Cups per se, but like the actual stretch and saying that was the best team in history. This team has a chance to do that, but only if they can, just like the All Blacks of the era I just mentioned, can be comfortable with the idea of going into every single match with the other team, putting a bullseye and saying, "Oof, if we just beat the Boks this time, our season is good." Party like it's 1999, like in Durban with the Irish drop goal. Like, be able to handle those moments and get to 80%, 85%, like, and not just win a lot, but put some teams away. And we've had those moments. Those moments have been occurring. I think the wins over Australia were really solid in that we spanked them, and not just with first line players. The crown, getting the crown against Argentina and really putting them away, putting them to the sword. That's what I think is needed to cement, to bolster this idea that Andre Pollard was talking about on another pod last week, saying, for him, the All Blacks of that era were still a little bit ahead of us. We have some work to do. And I think Andre is exactly right. And it's about the mentality, saying we're supposed to win. We do win. We will win. If we play our game and we do what we're supposed to do, it doesn't matter what you do. We're going to win that. And that's not braggadocio. It's not arrogance. It's nothing bad. It is what all dynasties, ruling proper championship teams, it's what they have. That swagger. It's quiet. It's like you've been there before. You know how to win. You do it. So go there to Scotland, do the job, score 4, 5, 6 tries.
I like that word braggadocio. And we got a bit of flack this past week, because last week we said, what could they expect from this game? What would they expect? What are their targets? And one of the targets was they have to beat Scotland by a record score. So there's one thing to be confident that you're going to win. It's another thing to be confident or brag about the fact that you're going to probably put them away with a record score. Any truth to that? I think we could probably beat them, quite handily.
Well, let's go back to the last time that we played them, where everyone had their horses and they had been through proper training in the Alps and in the Dead Sea, wherever they went for the World Cup. Everyone was fit. In Marseille, in a steam bath, there was like a sauna in there. I was about 20 rows up, and just watching Jean de Villiers and Skalkberger towel off so they could be on TV. It was sweaty in there. And Scotland came into that ranked 5th in the world. They were the most unlucky recipient of a draw, it was said. And, that was the pool of death. I talked to Greg Laidlaw, the really famous Scottish halfback, and he said the only way we can develop quick ball against the Springboks is to kick more. That's what he literally said. We had coffee, and he literally he outlined it to me right there on the docks in Marseille. He said, "We keep thinking we're going to pass our way around the rush blitz defense. It's not going to happen. We're going to get caught." And he also said, if you make Finn Russell try to do everything, he will try to do everything, and it's a trap. And so what happened in that day was Scotland only scored 3 points. And it was going into the World Cup, it was the best attack. So this is the problem is, Scotland still hasn't figured out that against the rush blitz defense, the teams that have done the best, Ireland and the All Blacks, this year so far, just putting us into tough spots, kick the ball over. They did little balloon kicks, little squib kicks, little grubber kicks, a variety of kicks. It wasn't one kick in particular. It was the fact that we didn't know where it was going. And Finn has those kicks in his wallet, so I think he could use it. The problem is that they preach so much, keep the ball alive, keep the ball in hand, and doing that against this Bok defense it's rugby suicide. If you just try to keep building phases against the Boks, you're going to get eaten up. The teams that have scored tries have come off quick strike moves. Phase 1, phase 2, a crossing pattern in the middle, 4 runners. Ireland, a line-out ball to the middle, a confusing setup, and someone strikes 3 and scores a try. That's it. 1-2, 1-2. I haven't seen anybody in World Rugby in years now be able to build 12, 15, 17 phases against the Boks and then ram it down our throats. And that's the problem. Scotland's still doing that. So what Laidlaw was saying to me is, you've got to kick more because it's those spilled kicks. And, especially now with the referee saying you got to have access, that's where you get quick ball. That's where you get, Justin Colby trying to catch a ball in the air against Duhan van der Merwe, and no matter how high you can jump, if someone's that much taller than you, it's going to be a problem. Blair Kinghorn, very long as well. So, yeah, I think if they're smart, Scotland will try to turn this into a 35-kick game.
Just explain to me that access thing. I saw it, especially against the All Blacks, the All Blacks in England game. But what does that mean? I have to have access.
So before, what happened is you do your little caterpillar or your whatever they call the caterpillar. It's not a caterpillar anymore. You hoist the box kick, and the box kick is referred to the box as a box because it puts you into a box. You're using the touch line as one defender. The ball's supposed to land somewhere in the tram line, and you're supposed to have the chasers arrive at the same time. Springboks alone in World Rugby use 3 or 4 chasers. You have Eben, you have Sia, and you have Cheslin Colby. So you have a quick, you have a jackler, and you have a big. And so they get in there and, they're hoping for scraps like Curtly Aronson did against the French. It falls out the back and then he runs and scores because you have so many chasers. But the key to the chase game working in kick chase is it's not skop en jag, it's not kick and hope. There's a design to it. Eben is coming up one side in particular. Quagga might be the other one, the jackler, and then you have Curtly or Cheslin or someone chasing beyond the ball. They want to literally get beyond the ball. So what teams developed to defend themselves against that was to have shepherds and guards. And the way they would do it is these escorts would, from the moment of the kick, the defending team would start to trot and jog slowly back as if they were going to get the ball or support the catcher in the ensuing ruck. But they weren't doing that. What they were doing was preventing Justin Colby from running the line he wanted. They were shouldering or elbowing out Peter Stiff to toy, so he had to go wide. And then, if they were worried about Marco or Quagga going for the pilfer, they had a big prop just jogging slowly. And as long as you didn't deviate your line and knock away the chaser, then you were considered to be a legal escort. And what they said now, and what who was it? Angus Gardner was the referee. He kept saying access. You got to have access. Apparently they said that before in memo. They went to the locker rooms and said it before the game and during the game. And Angus is a very articulate referee because now we have the ref mic on so we can, everyone can hear it now. And he's telling them what he wants to see. This is the picture I want to see, which is an aerial combat zone. Remember 8 years ago, it was all cards for aerials. Now everyone stopped, upending people. They want to bring the aerials back because it's visually good. And they want to have a fair contest. They don't want to have people run squadrons of, Joe Marler next to Frans Malherbe. I mean, like giant props where you cannot get to the catcher. And they don't want to have clever, shepherding on the sides. Now, what's interesting about that is this is a very pro-Bok interpretation. We're salivating at this. Like I said, we bring more chasers, we expend more lactic acid, we have more chase in our game and more design around the kick chase. And if you can get the flipping escorts and shepherds and guards out of the way, we're going to move someone because we can time that. We don't even have to go up in the air if we don't want to. We can just put Fossey up there and just pluck the ball out of the sky, Kanan Moody. If we have contests, that's true. That's good for Boks. Number two, we're going to kick. All teams will kick more. Like they've just gone against their whole stated purpose of too much kicking in the game. Like, okay, congratulations, guys. Now you're going to have, there's one more facet where it's more advantageous to kick because now the Boks kick, we have access to the landing zone. The landing zone plus scraps, which is, go back to the Lions series. That's where Chesson scored a try off of scraps that came down. Arm took it, Villy set it free and go. And so this ability to play off scraps and have a clean aerial contest is going to benefit the Boks. I don't think that that it's written into the law so much as it's an emphasis, and it shows you that referees, by emphasizing one thing versus another thing, can also put their finger on the scale. It's not just changing a law. It's just saying, I don't want to see this, I don't want you to bore in on the scrum. It didn't change a law. It just means that if I say that to you and then I'm willing to enforce it. What was the other one recently? Oh, in Cape Town, where Grant Williams got pinged for 2 seconds at the base of the ruck. If you just say that and you do it the first time it happens, the rest of the match, all the nines are going quicker. So it's a very fascinating time to be in rugby. In almost every respect, except for rewards at scrum, the changes will benefit the Springboks. I mean, in 7 out of 8 things, it's going to benefit the Springboks. I'm not saying that's what their purpose was. I'm not saying that they were being charitable or kind. I'm just saying that with the depth of squad, the different styles of players, having a Pollard and a Libbok in the team, having a Fossey and a Villy, there's so much variety in the way the Boks can play that they can almost do anything you want. But the one thing being referees' reticence to reward scrum dominance with a penalty, that sort of becoming more of a shy about scrum penalties. I think that's the one thing that we don't like.
Yeah, we saw it this weekend against New Zealand against All Blacks again. Scrum, and then a free kick awarded, and it was just another kick. And it was a Russian roulette. Whichever way the ball bounced, it was either going to be a score or not. That to me, you asked the question, is this now what we want? And I would have thought, listen, scrum dominance, get another one, get a penalty. But no, it's going to be a free kick. So that to me, like you said, speed up the game. But in most cases, it's leading to more kicks. It's not really what we wanted to see.
It does, because kicking is always your safest course. So if so the Will Stewart was dominant in the scrum, and he was probably could have got 2 more, but they got 2 scrum penalties. And we've talked about this a lot, is scrum penalties are one of the most lethal things for or against you in a rugby match. It kills you because you can exit too easily and you can enter too easily without having to go through any problems. You just get to put the ball, on a trusty boot who can make a line out happen 7, 5, 6 meters out from a scrum penalty in the middle of the field. So you want, that's a huge thing. But if that's the case and All Blacks crumble, probably kind of on purpose, maybe England has to do a free kick. So their best option is actually to kick an up and under. So now you've actually made one more scenario where kicking is smart because they put the kick up right on the line and then they get the ball back. So, rugby is just that. It's a football. It's a football code. It's called rugby football for a reason, in that, if you kick 10 times in a test match, you're probably going to lose. You need to be kicking 25, 26, or in England's case, 33 kicks kept them in the match. The reason why, even though the All Blacks had so many more meters and so many more carries and 211 passes to England's 103, 14 offloads to 3 offloads by England, 57% of the ball. The reason why it didn't really matter, and it was 22-24, and it was the All Blacks, they had to look back and see if the ball was going over to see if they won or lost. They had no control over the penalty kick. I'm not talking about the drop goal, but the penalty kick. They had to watch and see if they lost. It was because England was playing a clever game at the breakdown. So many turnovers, almost like clockwork, almost like there was a match we played, where was it? Where Ireland did that to us, where we built attacks, but it didn't really matter because you had great stats, you were clean breaks, and you were carrying the ball over the game line, but that every 6th or 7th play, they would turn the ball over. So it didn't matter. That's how rugby is constructed. So no, I thought England played the kind of match that you would expect them to play, just like they did in the semifinal against us, and they were right there in the match. So, vive la difference. I like clash of styles. I like a boxing fight where there's a puncher versus a boxer. I like tennis where it's a supreme serve returner against an amazing serve and volley guy. I like every kind of sport where you see the differences. I like to see a short hitting, short game guy in golf, Louis Oosthuizen, up against a big knocker like Ernie Els. Who wins? I don't know. It's interesting to me. So I thought that one of the reasons why the Red Roses, Sweet Chariot, whatever game against the All Blacks, the mighty All Blacks with the haka and all that, it was beyond just the occasion. It was that Borthwick was trying to win a different way, and he damn well almost did it. He did one thing wrong, which was take off his best place kicker on the day, who was 6 for 6, and put on a guy who hadn't played since September in club rugby, George Ford. Suddenly, like, hey, make a kick. It's a difficult job. And so I think, in the end, I hope rugby doesn't try to create a funnel of tactics and say everything has to look like this, because, it was fun to watch that match. I actually watched it again on Fast Forward just to see a few tactical things to be ready for this. And it's a good one. And it spells out that these autumn series matches are going to be humdingers.
I'll talk about England just now a bit more, but I wanted to ask you, you talked about our rush defense, and you had to kick to get around it or across it or over it for that matter. But to not Felix Jones, with Jerry Flannery, there's a bit of a difference in our defense. One of our subscribers asked you about that specifically. You said after the Loftus test against Ireland, you had to adjust a bit because we're playing a different attacking game, which means invariably our defense has to be a little bit different. Does that argument still apply? Is our rush defense as effective or deadly as it used to be, or is there a slight difference now?
We're exposing ourselves to more counter. So we have to construct our defense with a little more conservatism. As the attack gets more liberal, then your defense has to be more conservative, and then vice versa. Like, so if your attack is super conservative, then you can make your defense wild-eyed and crazy, like Nienaber, where it was all about the defense. So I think there's a transition there, and I think it's smart because the real effect of all that will be we can play different ways. Now, then you have to have players who can adjust and play the different way. You cannot just be a player that plays one way and exist in this Springbok lineup anymore. You like, depending on the day and depending on the weather and the opponent. But I mean, we have to give Jerry Flannery a little bit of time here. I think it's a good season. If you look at his defensive stats, they are good. There were just a few moments. There was a phase at Loftus that didn't look that great because we weren't used to having to resource the ruck that far wide. So it was different. It was different angles. It's also why we brought in some high work rate guys. You saw Ben Jason Dixon get to a lot of rucks that maybe other players wouldn't have. Peter Steff, I think, got to amazing amount of rucks. Even some of our props, Oxenshire was really good at getting there. But it means that it's different, right? You can exhaust yourself on attack as well. It's not just defense that makes you tired. If you have to always resource these rucks, then you have to work harder. And then we're also saying to our bigs they have to chase. So Ibn Etzebeth has to get to the ruck, he has to attend the ruck, he has to do a proper job of cleaning, and he has to not croc roll, and he has to do no neck roll, etc. But he also has to chase about 6 or 7 kicks. So it's just all coming back to what you want your guys to do, and I think Tony and Jerry are still working that out. They're calibrating. That's why it's so interesting. Rugby is such a unique collision sport in that attackers play defense and defenders attack. So there's no specialists. Everyone has to do everything. I think this end of the year tour is perfect because it's only 3 matches, unlike the 5 that New Zealand's playing, and so I think there's just a few wrinkles they want to see. And it's my belief they want to use some of these matches, probably the Scotland one in particular, to try out a few things. We've been seeing some varietals of lineouts. We've been seeing different attack plays. I think Scotland, they're good go forward, Duhan, Hugh Jones, and Tupeloto, but I think they are suspect on defense, and I think they can be run at and through.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that Scotland doesn't have the players to be able to really take us on, but 2 of them, Finn Russell and Blake Kinghorn, didn't play last weekend. They're going to be available this weekend. Finn, we know, plays for Bath, and Blake Kinghorn plays for Toulouse, and they've both been exceptional. But their replacements or stand-ins this past weekend also did a good job. What do you think? What are you expecting from Scotland in terms of the team selection for this weekend?
It'll be the best available. That's what we're going to get from now till the end of this great era of this Boks team. This Boks team is legendary. If everyone's been, paying attention and not getting too far into their grievance chambers, a lot of people are saying that the biggest match in World Rugby is to play the Boks, not the All Blacks. That was said a dozen times in the press this weekend. Like, that was kind of fun, but the Boks are coming. That's the big one. Ireland has fully admitted that they consider that win in Durban to be their finest achievement so far. It's better than the one they won in New Zealand. We are the metric. We're the defining thing. So Scotland will bring everything, because a win against the Boks in Murrayfield this weekend would be legend. They would mention it in the pantheon of the great moments in Scottish rugby. Because, like I'm saying, it's not just beating the Springboks in 1906 or, I don't know, in 1964 or something. This is considered by many to be one of the best versions of Springbok rugby ever. It's a new kind of Springbok team. It's not just the old standard muscle with a couple of quick wings. This is a true powerful team. The world champs, the back-to-back champs. They're going to bring everything they've got, and I'm going to be really happy because I'll be there. And so Lekker Rugby Pod's going to have a man on the ground growing up the Royal Mile. I'm going to drink a beer at every corner, and I try to meet as many people as possible, put it on video. But make no mistake, this is a huge occasion. When the Boks come, you saw how the stadiums in Australia were full. It's a huge moment. You saw how New Zealand was devastated to come so close, but not close enough. You saw how incredibly joyful the Irish were to nip that victory. This is the big game in rugby, is wherever the Boks go, that is the biggest game.
Well, you said now the teams are going to pick their best sides. And I was just thinking before we started talking, England, for example, have to play 4 weekends in a row. And the third game in that series of 4 is going to be against the Springboks. To me, that is the game of for us, for South Africa, that's the game of the series. Scotland is nice and Wales is sort of okay, but England is sort of the crown jewel of this tour. So how's England going to approach this in terms of their team selections against this for this weekend? Sparing the horses kind of a thing. And South Africa, how's Africa going to approach it in terms of making sure that our best team is available against England and they're fresh enough to be able to take on this new England, if I want to call it that.
Yeah, from our side, we don't have to pick the best available. I don't think we think Scotland poses that existential a threat. So I don't expect that we will pick a team that is the team we would have if we were playing a World Cup final. This will not happen. There will be some variations, whereas Scotland will. Scotland will pick a team that if they were in a quarterfinal against South Africa, that's who they'd pick at this moment if they were all healthy. Why can the Springboks do that? Number one, we can do that because there is depth, and I think if Springboks play their best with a properly picked team, even if it doesn't have everyone best at their position right now, they should win handily. That's what I've been saying. It's not arrogant. It's just the way that these things match up. Second, the way you can play against Scotland does reward a guy like Mani quite handsomely, because they don't press you. I mean, he's going to have a lot of time on the ball, and so the penalty we pay for mistakes are not as great. So when you play a team that punishes you really well for mistakes, then you want Andre, because he doesn't make many mistakes. Not just mistakes on what he does, but on how he directs people around him and how he helps people around him look better. Your choice at fullback, same thing, against a team that punishes you really well. When you're playing a team like Scotland, not only do they not punish you that well, they're susceptible to runaway tries. They're susceptible to soft tries. So you want a guy who can create soft tries. Andre doesn't create as many soft tries as Mani does. Mani and that ilk of player, and you can go into 9 as well. You can just run around the base and catch Scotland napping sometimes. Scotland likes to play a 4-3 try game. We score 4, you score 3, and they win. They're not that great when it's no tries to 2 or 2-1. They don't know how to do that. So, what happens is over time is they're not really used to playing a Springbok team that comes out and plays like against Argentina. So like if you put that game plan on the field, you're going to score a lot of points against Scotland. And it's not like Glasgow, Edinburgh, Urk. This is test level. And so with all guns firing, Springboks can run tries in. You just don't want to give them too much hope. And so you don't want to have, a guy like Duhan or Darcy Graham get too happy too quickly. Hugh Jones and Sione Tuipulotu, also a really good midfield. So on attack, they're dangerous. So I just don't think South Africa has to name their best team so England under Borthwick, he's an incrementalist, and all he does is the same. He's going to try and get continuity. He's steaming right now because they know they had that game they should have won. And they're going to want to bully Australia on their home patch and get Twickenham man, as we call him, every man in Twickenham. They want that guy to be happy again. They've lost 4 in the trot. So they're going to try to bury Australia. And then they're just going to try to ride their luck, Hey, tell all the guys, hey, one more time, go into the breach against the Springboks, make your name, change your fortune, write your story by beating the Boks. So I don't see Borthwick doing much chopping and changing. He'll ride those guys, and he'll feel like they're fit enough. They looked as fit as the All Blacks at the end of that game. So, everyone's got a different program. I think Rassie will still want to see a few changes here and there for Scotland, and then come back to his, best against England, because I think you're right. They've circled that game and say, that's the one that poses the big threat. We don't like the way the semifinal went. We don't like it that we had to kick one to win. I think they want to win properly against England.
In terms of the Springbok team for Scotland, this is now obviously recorded before that. What do you expect? France is not there. Bill Coulo's in the squad, but we had Thomas Eto'o in the press conference. That's typically a good indicator that he might be playing. Just in terms of your forward pack, who do you expect to not be there? I mean, who do you think is going to be the run-on team?
I think the primary question mark is around who calls the lineouts. I know that Sosa's back, but I don't know how he feels. I'm not sure what's going on there. It's, maybe they want to ease him in. He's also a good bench player, and if you want to bring energy. I don't know if they want to pair up Argia with Eben, or they want to do, a monster Bob squad. We have Mostert and Sneeman, a hell of a Bob squad. You just bring in like giants all over the pitch, and then one Kwacha along with them. So yeah, I would start with the line-out caller. I don't know the answer. I would think that Nortje has deserved, if that's a word that we're allowed to use in Bok camp. I don't know if anyone deserves anything, but in a way he kind of does, to see if he can do this. I know that line-out shakiness has been one of the Achilles heels of the Boks this season. So maybe there's some continuity there to say, okay, Ruan, you got this, you're calling the line-outs, and everything else kind of stays the same. So the first picks in the loose forwards, you have your Pieter-Steph, Sia, and Visa. You have Eben, so that's all first choice. You've got the available front rowers, and there's one change there. But then maybe Ruan is the guy that gets to call the lineouts, and then you have a ready, strong 2-lock bench ready to go if there's any problem.
5-3 bench or 6-2 bench?
6-2 bench, because that is one of the flaws of Scotland, is they don't have depth in grunt. The meat supply runs short. So unlike some teams where you can structure it a different way, I think Scotland, you always just say, we're going to keep running big guys at you and dominate the gain line and dominate the breakdown.
Talk about Cameron Hanekom. Big fuss made about the fact that he wasn't selected, then he was selected. He was also in a press conference on Friday, and you and I had a bit of a chat about what his ideal position would be in a Springbok setup. Do you see him getting a chance on this tour, or maybe just a bomb squad appearance? What do you think is the plan with him specifically?
We all like Cameron Hanekom. It's impossible not to see the talent, the athleticism, the intelligence. He's just a proper rugby player. But you start to look at test rugby more than at club rugby. You look at body styles and how it fits into the greater team dynamic. And as I told you, I kind of start thinking of him as a Josh van der Flier, World Player of the Year, fantastic player for Ireland. Not the biggest guy, definitely has played 8, could play 8. But the minute you go and do when you play a guy at like Artie Savea, also someone that Cameron Hanekom reminds me of. He's starting out, so don't get too excited about me comparing him to Artie Savea. I'm not saying that he's as good as Artie Savea yet, but same physique, same dimension, same inability to put on an extra 7 kilograms without changing the body style because he's an athlete. Josh van der Flier has made a living off being really good over the ball, but also being a support player and was World Player of the Year. I think Cameron Hanekom has enough talent to be as good as those guys. But I might want to see him at opensider, where I think Artie Savea should still be and where I think Josh van der Flier is, because then you haven't sold yourself short on a proper 8 big carrier who has to do some awkward carries, who has to do carries when he's on the back foot. And like it or not, if we don't love him, Jasper Wiese can do that. You can give him the ball as you're going backward and everything's against you and your scrum is on roller skates backward and you get hit by 2 people at the same time, and Jasper just bulldozes. He can just keep going. He can do the most amazing carries where he gets 0 meters, but it's the best 0 meters you ever saw because it should have been -5 and he should have been dominant tackle, but he was never dominant tackle. I mean, who have you seen dominant tackle Jasper Wiese ever? Mm-hmm. And that's something. That's a fire plug. That's the safety valve. That's the hole at the bottom of the dam that you can plug and it doesn't go out. So, if you have that, then you get to have the tricks at 6 and 7. Pieter-Steph and Cameron Hanekom is what I'm imagining. Why am I talking about that? Why am I saying this sacrilege? Well, we love him to death. He's our captain, Siya Kolisi, but he's going to be 37 in Australia in 2027. Now, there are some positions where you could be 37 and it's not that strange. But open side flanker, when you're getting smashed at every jackal attempt where where almost all your carries are into incredible collision zones, and you're a dominant tackle like CS. He is a really great dominant tackle, doesn't get covered very much in the press, but he's really good in contact. So the odds of him getting injured before he's 37, pretty high. And the odds of that body slowing down and just the accumulation, the mileage on it. He's played almost twice as many club games as Eben. Eben has played way more tests than he has club matches, whereas Sia is the opposite. I think you got to look at a proper like for like. And I think maybe a return to more of a proper open sider who can do it. Hanekom shows me with his what Ringo calls Ringo Low, the loosest hamstrings in the Irk. His ability to get over a ball at stretch is unbelievable. And I think so instead of trying to change his body type and say, oh my man, you got to put on 5 kgs and get to the weight room and become like a thick-necked Marco van Staden guy, I would say be you. And just embrace the fact that you are a tearaway tyro flanker, like a old school Rob Lowe, and the game's going to reward that more and more. And we need someone who's that athletic. So that's my pitch for Cameron Hanekom to not necessarily give up on number 8, but don't put all your eggs in the 8 basket. Think about 6. Think about the fact that there's not really a clear, defined, obvious successor to Sio Kolisi. And, he twists an ankle tomorrow. Who is it? Is it Marco van Staden? Is it Kwagga? Putting Kwagga in the start of a match is such a handicap, as we saw against Ireland. Even though we won in Loftus, it was gruesome to watch him carry into channels that a proper 8 like Caelan Doris can handle, because they just have a big body with some extra padding, and they're not fazed too much by someone hitting them. And there's a law of physics, guys. At some point, either Cameron's going to have to put on more and be bigger to be, I think, a test 8 against the big teams like the French, or I think he's going to look at a different position.
And if Cameron's at 6, Wiese is at 8, long term, who do you see at 7? This is interesting.
So on the blind side, geez, we got a lot of talent. It's almost too soon to tell, right? I mean, you see glimpses. You also see problems, like I name dropped Ben Jason Dixon, but then he had that one awful test, which to be fair, he fronted up and explained it. He literally explained being too ready, being not ready, thinking differently, not understanding the differences between test and club. But there's so many players you can start to think about. There's so many quick locks, and there's so many guys who are playing in 8 who could also fit into blind side. It's the tough thing in South Africa is if you're a loose forward and you're pretty good, and you're pretty good at the Sharks, or you're pretty good at the Stormers, or even a guy that's doing really well at the Bulls, you're not guaranteed anything. But there's, look out that window. there's some guy out there ready to play loose forward right now that we haven't talked about yet, because maybe he's playing varsity cup right now. It's just the particular DNA, style, physique, athleticism, what is rewarded when you're 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old in South Africa is loose forward play. And there's always going to be more. There's guys playing right now in England that are tearing it up. Like Hanro Liebenberg is, one of Leicester Tigers' greatest players, probably in history. They'll retire his number. They'll put a statue out there. And, there's the Dupree brothers that are always right there on the edge. We're just talking about people who probably aren't in the conversation, along with some of these guys that are looking really good so far.
Interesting thing, Rassie said last week on, I think, BBC, one of their pods, about some of the locks at the Bulls that are drawing his attention. I think he's probably referring to Gobus Wiese more than anyone else as a 4.
Yeah, like I've said before, he's to me the biggest pickup for the Bulls in the season, in that he does the unseen work, the non-stat work. Doesn't always show up very well in highlights. He's the non-highlight star. And you look at guys who will do the ugly things and stick their head down a drain to unclog the toilet. That's the guy. Rugby's got a lot of moments like that where you need someone whose ego allows him not to stand off there yapping at the 9 and saying, I'm open, give it to me, I'm ready to carry. You also want someone who's going to stick their head in dark and ugly places where people are murmuring to you terrible things about your ancestors. That's where you need. And Cobus is like one of those guys who seems to relish contact. And I've studied this a lot about people who can watch a punch as it's being thrown instead of, grimacing. Or Skalkberger at his finest would accelerate into contact. Okay, that final meter, most people will actually slow down and brace themselves when there's another species of player that can just explode. So Cobus Vista's definitely got that. I think Elrich Lowe has that too, by the way. He explodes into contact. So you get two guys and you measure their speed, and you even say carry a ball and wear everything. You wear your togs. And I'm going to time you. You go, oh, wow, that guy's quicker than you. The Ivan Rus is quicker than Elrich Lowe over 10 meters or 5 meters. But then you actually go into a match and you see over the final meter of contact zone, what happens? Do you turn yourself? Do you try to absorb contact, or you just kind of explode into contact? And so I have often thought recently that the Springbok team, the coaching team, is looking for that. Exhibit A, Kwagga Smith. Like, the guy doesn't look like he should be able to handle. I've just talked bad about him at being number 8, but I cannot praise him enough as being the bomb bench guy. I mean, he's almost the definition of it because he explodes into contact. And Jasper Wiese does that. Damon Delende does that. You seldom see him get monstered in contact because he just has an ability to explode. So there's a lot of things I think that go into some of these compositions of teams. I know that if you look at, for example, England versus New Zealand over the weekend, you see who carried a lot and how well they did. If you can get good carries from the guy that wasn't supposed to be your prime carrier. So Wallace Satiti, 16 carries. He was clearly designated you don't get 16 carries unless the game plan says you should get a lot of carries. But what about if you get extras from Asafa Omua? Or for England, you get extra carries from Maro Itoje in addition to Ben Earl. That way you're a dangerous team because everyone knows Ben Earl is going to get 17 carries and Wallace Satiti is going to get 16-ish. But who are your next line? And so for the Boks, I think they are looking very closely at locks who can carry. And I think your Bulls locks are good carriers. I think that's where a guy like Ruben van Heerden has maybe fallen down a little bit because he's a good tackler, great set piece operator, but hasn't looked as good in the carry.
One last question about this team now. A little bit more than a year ago, that Marnie sort of played Scotland like a fiddle in that game that you referred to earlier. Your 9-10 combination for this game, who do you think is going to be the guys getting selected?
I think it's kind of fun to troll Scotland by playing Marnie again.
Sure.
And I would actually tell him to do a no-look kick on purpose for no real reason, that just to be funny. Yeah, I think if you think of people having muscle memory, but also opponent memory, it could be, I think Marnie likes playing against Scotland. He's comfortable with those Scottish players. He sees them all the time in the Irk. Marnie's your fly-off that you want to play if kicking's not the issue at polls. If you think that there's a shot at running a score up, you always have the ability to put Pollard on the bench, who can cover more than 10, by the way. I think that's possible. I might do that. I do think it's important to keep people in your squad engaged and not have someone languish too far on the outside and feel like they did something that can never be forgiven. I think you want to have an ability in a squad to say you can always make your way back. But I do quite like the idea of sheer speed. Finn Russell's a great player, but he's not nearly as quick as Marnie. I think you could run at him and move him. And the minute when you make Siono Topoloto, the new Scottish captain, have to bite in to protect his 10, if you're running Marnie Damien together at him, everything opens up for Jesse and the Leckerbacks. So there's a bit of cat and mouse there on our ball. When they have the ball, then I think we've got a plan that seems to work on Finn every time, which is make Finn almost too fantastic. Finn sanity, where everything is revolving around Finn. And all he sees is open space for him. Make Finn the runner, because he's going to get smashed.
One last thing I wanted to ask you. Glasgow Warriors against the Stormers. I know Test is not the same as club rugby, but Marnie was nowhere in that game. And he made mistakes. He got a yellow card. It was a bit of a stupid yellow card. But the point is they knew how to neutralize him. Isn't that a danger?
Yeah, so I think Handré Pollard is my starting number 10 for the Boks. If we think about those in the old ways of having an actual incumbent. But I don't want him to play all 3 matches. So, like, for me, he's a definite for England. I think the way England plays will require, just like Damien McKenzie had to make a kick. He did make the kick, and that's why New Zealand won. And not just that one kick that Damien McKenzie made, just in general, he played a solid, really un-Damien McKenzie type game. I'd want Pollard to do that from the start. I don't really care that much about the final. So if you're going to play Marnie at all, it just seems like the Scotland game, regardless of what happened with the Stormers, who have an attack plan drawn up by a drunken sailor from the docks. I think we can put Marnie in a better space against Scotland than against England.
No, but I agree with you on that. It's just that we only have 2 fly-offs on tour. That's a bit of a, I don't know, that's a bit of a funny scenario to me almost.
Yeah. Oh, no, Jordan Hendricks is in now.
Yeah, sure. I forgot about it.
Yeah,
right.
but I don't think he's slotted in to get significant game time. So maybe Jordan is a bench option, player 23 even, because he can cover a lot against Wales. But I think against Scotland, who is dangerous in the beginning of a game, I don't think they have the staying power. I think Marnie, that's the perfect spot to get Marnie his mojo back. Not that he ever lost it, but I mean, you want to get him back on the horse. And then you always have a finisher if you need, because Pollard has shown an aptitude to being the guy off the bench. I mean, he's shown that it doesn't really matter to him one way or the other.
I had a very interesting conversation with Jan, our friend, Rocketfoot. He can fix Marnie. So watch that video. I'll put the link up here. It was very
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod.
So yeah, let's see what happens.
With
Thanks,
Harry Jones and
Emily
Brought to you
Cool.
by
Let's
City
go.
Cars.
I'm ready for it.